All right. So before I go, everybody can see my screen, right? See what's on it. So no, this will be based on 1.5 models. Um, as I was saying earlier, I haven't really messed around with Excel too much, or well, sorry, I haven't messed around with it at all. Um, that'd be a cool thing to do in the future. I'd say Brain would be the better person for it. Um, my process has basically been thousands and thousands of images with 1.5 in Comfy, so that's kind of my area of, I wouldn't say expertise, but just base knowledge. Um, but I'd like to see an Excel class, and I will be attending the crap out of that. So, well, thank you all for coming today. Um, I think this should be pretty cool. I'm not going over anything too crazy. So like I said in the description of the event, if you don't have Comfy installed, I feel bad for you, son. Um, this isn't going to be an install. This is going to be words are tough. This isn't going to be an install tutorial, obviously. So if you don't have it installed yet, this will be recorded for you to check out later. We won't be going over any custom node installs, but I will be dropping some links for some useful stuff that if you haven't installed it yet, it may be useful for you down the road. So to get started, we're just going to assume that you have everything up and loaded. What you're looking at right now is just kind of an example, text to image, and then upscale um, workspace that I threw together real quick this morning. Nothing super crazy. This is kind of the starter of what I usually do. So I'll kind of explain a little bit about what I'm doing, but first I want to kind of go over just navigating the UI. I know some of you have just started in the past week using Comfy. I know Bard just hopped on that a couple days ago and already killing it. Um, so a lot of flexibility here, but first you got to know kind of how to get around. So um, assuming you have a blank workspace, you can right click and you have this add node. And then you have all these menu options here with a familiar name in here. Wonder where I got these guys. Um, but different nodes that you can use, and we'll kind of explain what the basic necessities are, I guess, to get things started here. So a few different ways so you can navigate your nodes. So you got your drop down menus by right clicking on the workspace. You add node, go through everything. Say you're going to load a checkpoint, you go to loaders. You can load your VAE, your LoRa, all that good stuff. But say you already know what you're looking for, you don't want to go through all the menus and find it. You double click, and you can search checkpoint, and then you can do that. So you can load it up that way as well. And you can click on it, delete it as well. Just some easier way to navigate your node menus there. Let's see what else I got. About this guy right here, this is kind of your control center. I don't really mess around. You can modify how the interface works a little bit here. Um, your control precision, your grid size. I don't really mess around too much with this. In fact, I think I've opened it up once or twice the entire time I've been using Comfy. But what I usually use, in case you guys haven't noticed, I post uh, somewhere in the somewhere in the neighborhood of a metric fuck ton of images per day. Um, So how I do that is by this extra options check mark. You can do a couple of things. You can increase your batch count, much like an automatic 1111, where instead of batch size, you increase your batch count. So you can set that up all the way. But what I do is this little button is basically an automatically queue prompt when the queue size hits 0. So just to show you, press that, and as soon as it's done, it'll go right back to the beginning and do another one. And then you can just, oh yeah, and if you keep it checked and you click cancel, it'll just load the next prompt. Now, what I like about that too is if you are doing like a long image to image string, like You start at 768, 1024, and then you go to 1280, 1536, so on and so forth. But you're wanting to make sure that initial image is good. I could hit Q prompt with that infinite one on there, and I'm like, ooh, don't like that. Go back to the next one. Don't like that either, until you like the one that you get. So from here, one second. Yeah, absolutely. So kind of not going too far into, I'm gonna kind of touch on Laura's and checkpoints a little bit. We're gonna assume that you have your checkpoint and everything like that. You kind of your old trusty, if you will. Um, but that's kind of a little bit on queuing prompts. It's kind of my favorite feature is the unlimited. And I know I think in the Vlad fork of Automatic 1111, you can right click and infinite queue, but it doesn't mean as much I think as it does in Comfy um, because you want to be able to see all of your images once in Automatic 1111 you want to see um, like the total amount of images that you've produced and choose from there if you're going to upscale one. Yeah, Comfy is really fast to interrupt, way faster than Automatic 1111. So that's a plus when it comes to that infinite queue option I was just showing you. Yeah, we're going to go over the decoders and encoders as well. We're going to set up a whole text to image workspace here in just a moment. Okay, so to interrupt, let's go. I'm going to hit Q prompts, and then if you have this extras option, actually, wait, rather. So the CQ button right here, you click that open, it'll show you what queues are or what prompts are running. So there's that. You hit cancel, and then it's interrupted. Now, one of the things you'll notice too, and this is primarily if you have a very big project going, like say you have a 1536 or a 2048 image generating, it's going to be in this VAE encode for a while, and it won't let you interrupt until it's into the sampler. So if it's still running through this encode and you hit cancel, it'll take a second, at least in my experience. As far as okay, so saving your workspace and loading it is very important as well. Say I really like how this wonderful picture of Steve Buscemi turned out, but I forgot what workspace I had, so all that's gone. Now I don't have a workspace, but I really liked how that picture turned out. So say you have your outputs folder and you have your image saved. What's cool about Comfy is it saves the metadata in the image. If you drag that picture back into an empty workspace, it'll load up the exact configuration that was used to produce that image, which is really neat. It's kind of like if you're super familiar with Automatic 1111, it's like PNG info, but just way easier, like so much easier. Um, uh, Important note, not super important, but it is to some people. The metadata in Comfy doesn't translate to Civet AI. So if you were posting sample pictures for your model merge release, it's not going to show that metadata in Civet. So you'll have to manually input all of that data if you want to. When I'm and I don't really post on Civet that often. I have my one model, and that meant me going into A1111 to do those example pictures because I wanted to get all that metadata in there and not have to copy the seed manually from one of these guys and all of the steps and CFG and everything like that. So kind of a downside, and maybe it's something that they add down the road, but who knows. Another way to load in or save and load your workspace is obviously, so you got right here, you see save. So I'm going to save this as Buscemi. Got it. Saved. And now it's going to save it as a JSON file. Now, cool thing is you can send that to a friend, say, hey, check out my workspace. But you know what? You can do it exactly the same with that image. Dropping the image into the pipeline. You can just send your friend that image and they can pop that in there anything like that. And then of course you can load. I have all sorts of JSON files over the past couple months that I've been using. What's a crazy one that I've done? Upscaling with ControlNet. This one was a wild one that I don't ever touch anymore. So, and then of course you can also clear your workspace too. So you hit this clear button. I want all that gonzo. So, real quick, I'm looking over my notes here. So, kind of some of the benefits over Automatic 1111 is obviously automation, which is strange because Automatic has the word automatic in it. I feel misled, and my disappointment is immeasurable. My day is ruined. The cool thing about Comfy is if you have something that you do over and over and over again. For me, my process is always text to image. I do an image to image, and then I upscale that with the model, which I guess for A11 users, people usually refer to as the extras upscale. And then after that, I take it back into image to get more details refined. Now, all of that takes a whole lot of send to image, send to extras, and some very manual process. But here you can set up your text to image, and then it feeds straight into the image to image, model upscale, image to image again, and then some other fancy stuff that we're not going to be going over today. So kind of a really cool benefit about running it through Comfy. Now, some of the downsides, in painting is not as great. I think I've messed with in painting in the actual sense once in Comfy, and I just wasn't impressed. Now, not to say that it's a bad thing, because I don't think that's its primary purpose. If you're big on in painting and you have a very involved process, I know Rose was talking about how she refines so many aspects of her images. I'd say it's okay to set up your initial image in Comfy, because that process may be long still, and then take your image over to Automatic 1111. But you will need to get your prompts and everything like that. So um, it's not too big of a deal. I used to do it all the time before I haven't opened Automatic 1111 in a good minute. Because I don't do a whole lot of in painting aside from the face these days. Um, some other cool things is maybe at some point we'll talk about, probably not today, but we can talk about another time, kind of setting up an auto prompt. A lot of my work, most of my work is done via auto prompts that I have set up. Let's see. I don't know where my workflow is saved, but basically I have parameters set up for different hairstyles, different outfits, different eras. So like I'll have a futuristic era, cyberpunk, Victorian era, and I'll have a bunch of conditions that it will follow. If it's a Victorian era, I'm going to make sure it doesn't have random cyberpunk outfits popping up in there. So some cool prompting options, as well as some nodes to help prompting, which I'll talk about a little bit later on in this class. And then of course, I also put this down as a benefit over Automatic 1111. Even though you can set in Automatic, you can set your workspace to save the state if you exit, but it's not always perfect. I found that sometimes it doesn't save absolutely everything, even though I set the check marks to save, say, the sampling method that I am are we going to talk over templates? Yes, we can talk about templates. In fact, I'll do that here in just a bit. But just being able to save that workflow is just a massive benefit, especially if you have something that you can do consistently well. Like you have a workflow that has just been working out really well and pumping out masterpieces left and right. It's really cool to be able to have that function. But before we get started in setting up a workflow here, anybody have any questions so far as I sip some coffee? Nothing? Okay. I see some typing going on. Yep. Nothing? Okay. Alrighty. So, what we're gonna do first is just set up our basic text to image. Nothing crazy, no upscales quite yet. We're just gonna set up the base text to image to get started. So, like I said, you can pull up your nodes a couple different ways. Uh, Good first starter is to get your checkpoint loaded up. So, add node, loaders, load checkpoint. I have it set to, let me see. What do I want to, let's go K's mix. So you're gonna load your checkpoint. Um, Other thing you're gonna need to do, I'm gonna go back to loaders. Gonna load the VAE. Now you see that there's also a VAE string here. That's gonna just connect it to the model, and it's not gonna look as good. If you have a VAE that you use in Automatic 1111, you can make sure that you have access to it here in Comfy as well. It was Discord problem on my phone. Oh, okay, gotcha. So you got those two loaded up. Next step, and I kind of go everywhere. So I'll try to keep on track as much as possible because I'm very creative and where yes, yeah. Can you see it well enough here? How about now? Is that good? Okay. Okay. So so you got that going. Now, where do you put your prompts? So you can so conditioning. That's going to be where you get your prompts set up with. It's going to be clip text encode. Now, you're going to need two of these. You need your positive prompts and your negative prompts. So you could right click on any node and you see clone right here. So I'm going to right click on the first one that I loaded. And I'm going to hit clone. Boom. I have two of them now. Yes. You can alt drag. I didn't just learn this that second. I swear. So you're going to need to connect some things now. You could start connecting now or we connect later, but you have to connect your clip to that clip text encode. Both of them. They'll go to the same one. Next up, we are going to start out with, for text to image, it's called empty. So you're going to create an empty latent image. So there's nothing you connect this to from the backside, but this will connect to our sampling method. So we're going to go K-sampler, so the very tippy top one. And so now you have some stuff that you need to connect. So for the sampler to connect to the model, you connect it to that checkpoint loader that you set up earlier. Connect your positive to positive and negative to negative. And if I'm going fast, for any of the newbies here, let me know and I can go back and discuss it some more. But for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of go through some of these so we can get to the more fun stuff. Now for the empty latent noise image, you could take that, put it there, connect it just like that. And we'll worry about the settings here in just a moment. Now, once it goes through the sampler, it needs to decode using the VAE. So I'm just going to pull it up here too. So latent. So you have your VAE decode, and we'll talk about some of the other options as well. Do explain how noise works in K-sampler. So how do you mean? Like denoise level? Okay, so denoise is so for let's talk about this for just a quick second before we get back on track. So an empty latent noise is your brand new image. So you're starting here with your text to image. You want your denoise set at 1 because that's a brand spanking new image. Now, say if we were going to the next step, which I'll show you in just a moment, as soon as we get some images generating, you're probably going to want to adjust that denoise like you would an image to image or high res fix in Automatic 1111. Yeah, it's an empty canvas. Now, if you have your denoise set to 1 with an image to image, it's pretty much also almost like a blank canvas. So we'll go over kind of different denoise values, and a lot of this is just messing around with different values and seeing what works for you on that model you have, or with the size of image you have. There's a whole lot of variables that you're just going to have to mess around with. But you see all your usual steps, or all your usual um, adjusters that you are probably somewhat familiar with in automatics. So some familiar stuff going on here. So now that we need to decode the image, we're going to take the latent output into samples of the VAE decode. But remember how I said about connecting things up, we need to get that VAE connected to our VAE. And then we need to get it hooked up to an image. Now you can set it up to save image, and then you just connect it that way. But for me, I don't want to save anything, so you can go preview instead, and then connect that bad boy up. Now this won't save anything. So if you have some steps in your workflow, you're going to go down a few steps of upscaling and all that. I always use preview images. If there's a step that I know I'm going to have to go through multiple times, I do end up saving multiple steps. That's exactly right. You gotta fuck around and find out and see what works best for you. But for now, this is basically it to set up a text to image. So we can go add our negative prompts here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to do, oh my God, typing. Nudity, low quality, bad quality, and then portrait of, what am I going to do? Anthony Hopkins as a baker. And then you can add all of your usual stuff. Resolution, cinematic, detailed. Thank you. And then I'm going to go ahead. It's going to load up the model we chose. Cue the prompt. And then there's our... Yeah, so, and we'll talk about negative embeddings too. So this is something else. But you can use negative embeddings as well if you haven't messed around with textual inversion at all. I just learned how to use it, I'd say, a week ago. So no shame there. But that is basically your simple, in what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 nodes, you got a text to image workspace. Now, messing around with some settings here. So in your empty latent, you can change the size. Obviously, I have it set to 512 because it's fast and it's good for testing. You can also increase the batch size. So if I were to do that, it's going to run a batch of 4, and then it will show up like this. So it has a little X. Now you have 4 images to choose from. So we got that. I'm going to bring it back down to 1. Any questions so far on anything I've set up here? Maybe. That's a 4090 for you. And then you got your steps. I usually take it to about 30. That's just mine. My sampling method of choice is DPM to M, Paris. And then we'll run that again. I don't know if they're making him a baker or the Pope, but we'll work with it. Yeah, I could probably bring up the size a little bit too. Yeah, he's got Pope energy going on. Yeah, I think it's trying to make a baker's hat, but it's going full Pope. So yeah, that's your text to image. There's not really too much else to show kind of in just this basic first step here. So let me see. What else do we want to go over right now? Okay, so when it comes to image size, one of the benefits that I forgot to mention, and this is kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself, but One of the things that I noticed right away, if you're familiar with tiled VAE, especially if you got a graphics card that can't handle larger image generations, I found that having that is very important. But one of the cool things about Comfy is, although it's not ideal, if you hit that max size that it will usually give you an out of memory error, the VAE decode will automatically switch to tiled VAE. Now it takes an extra second, so I'd say it's better to be prepared for that. If you notice that a certain step in your workflow is giving you that switching to tiled VAE message in your command prompt, I'd say go ahead and switch this node out with VAE decode. So this is basically the same thing, but it'll tile it. And we'll go over that too, because I'm going to generate some bigger images here as well, so you get to kind of see it in action. I think my graphics card is good for about 2048 by 2048 without tiled, so you won't really get to see it in action. But if you have that out of memory, what's that? If it still doesn't work in some cases when it switches, so yeah, if you still have that error, I know. What graphics card are you using, Ali? Is it I know you said okay, 1050. So you might be using that pretty early on. I'd say kind of play around with it, see what errors you get or what the max size you get. You're going to be a little bit limited in the 1050 Ti, but it's still doable, and that's kind of the wonderful thing about Comfy is you get to make those on the fly adjustments without having to just go back and forth between tabs and everything like that in automatics. So it's mostly around 2K. Yeah, that's how I was with my A2000 as well, before I upgraded, and it just barely was able to get 2048 by 2048. Kay currently has that graphics card, and she's able to do the same thing. Just started generating at 2048 as well, and it's really good for detail, but you got to make sacrifices where you can, and if you can't make giant images right off the bat, that's perfectly fine. A giant image doesn't mean a good image, so just keep that in mind. But for now, we're going to talk about upscaling. So how do we go bigger from here? This is not the ideal size. You can see detail sucks, everything like that. So we're gonna add another column to this here. So how do I connect this over to another? Let's do this. So I'm gonna use that fancy alt drag tip that Brain just taught me just a second. I'm gonna also alt drag the VAE decode because we don't quite need our tile decode yet, at least not for me. And then I'm also gonna copy over preview image. Let me connect that preview image. We're going to connect the VAE, our samples, just like we did in the image to image or text to image, connect our model. So you need to do this with every new sampler. Connect our positive, our negative. You can use Control C and then Control Shift V to duplicate with connections intact. Yeah, and so I'll go over also another way to do this as well. If it's something that you do often, like you're duplicating, if you're duplicating giant chunks of, like last night I was doing like a 7-8 step image to image upscale to try to get up to 4K. Spoiler alert, it was futile. There was no point in doing it because by the time it got to 4K it looked like trash. But scientific purposes. So how do you get the image as your latent image? Well, you need to encode it. So we're going to go ahead and look for VAE encode. So we haven't used this one yet. You'll connect the pixels to your output image of that first text to image. Of course, you're going to connect your VAE. Now, if you were to just connect the latent image, you'd get the same size image. So how do we make the image bigger? We're going to go ahead and upscale, you're going to do latent upscale. There's a couple different things we could do. We're going to start with just latent upscale. Let me move this up a little bit. So this will let you upscale to 1024. And then you just make sure to have this sandwiched between the two. And then we'll go ahead and hit generate. And then it took it into the VAE encode. And now, so you see a problem. I forgot a step here. Anybody tell me what the problem is? Why the image turned out so differently? Yep. So denoise is too high. So we can set it to, I usually do my 768 to 1024 at 0.5. Seems to work out the best. Godfather image, exactly. So now it's going to take that. Oh, that one's good. I like that one. And then it upscaled with not too many changes. Save this one, please. Yeah, sure, why not? So that's open. So that is one way of doing it. Now, what I like to do, because here's what I do a whole lot. In my auto prompt setup, I have, and we'll kind of brush on this just a little bit if we have time. But I have it alternating between aspect ratios. And so if I have it set to change from 768 by 768 to 512 by 768, and the upscale latent is set to 1024 by 1024, you're going to run into some issues where it's going to stretch. It's going to stretch the image and make it look all weird. So what I do, instead of the upscale latent, the regular upscale, let's get rid of that, disconnect it. I am going to use upscale by. So this is a cool function where it lets you upscale it by a factor instead of a set size. So I'm going to sandwich that in there. And to get 1024 by 1024 from 768, that's 1.333. And it will be the same thing. So I'm not going to run it again like this, but what I am going to do is I'm going to set the width to 512. So it's like that. And then you'll see as soon as it runs through, it's going to maintain that aspect ratio. Just like that. Any questions on that? Do show what these different methods in upscale do as well. How much time? Okay. So different upscale methods. As far as different upscale methods go, there's this upscale latent by, there's the upscale latent. I'm assuming what you're talking about is also, would it be that extras upscale that you may have used in yeah, so upscale using model. So that's actually going to be my next, yeah, that was going to be the next bit here too. So we got our image to image process. And so that's kind of what I was talking about. Some of the benefits of using Comfy is I didn't have to take this text to image and then bring it on over to image, copy all the same settings or adjust all those settings. I can just continuously do this and it will pop out the same. Yeah. Yeah. So our first step to go ahead to do the upscale by model or the extras upscale. So we are going to go upscale model loader. And I'm not going to go 4 times. That's insane. So you have to choose this is one of the cons I was talking about with ComfyUI is where the extras upscale method in automatic will let you change it up by 1.5 or 2 or 4 or 8. I don't know who would do 8. You have to have it just set to a model. So I don't use either of these two because I don't need a 4K image right off the bat. So I have downloaded a 2 times upscaler, and I'll have to find it. And when I do find it, I'll put it in a link in the classes. I don't know where I got this upscale model for 2 times, but I'll try to find it. So you have your upscale model loader. Now we're going to need to upscale with model. You're going to need to connect your upscale model to this node, and then connect the image to that output. So now it's going to upscale this to, oh, let me just copy that, and we'll just show you. Just like that. It's too slow, I know. So now that that's done, what I do in my process is I add another image to image to it, but it's for a different reason, not to make it bigger, but to add detail to this upscale using model, because it's really only stretching the image and smoothing it out a little bit, in my opinion. How's it going, Halo? Yeah, drinking no good for class. There's an alternative though, but I don't know if it's frowned upon or not in your country. Okay. Exactly. So next step would be, and just for the sake of it, I don't think I'm gonna out of memory, but I'm going to add an encode tiled. Going to connect the pixels to the output of the upscale output there. Oh, got to connect the VAE. Then I'm just going to take a K sampler over here, connect that up, positive, our negative, and our latent over there. So notice I'm not doing any upscale latent by or anything like that, because I'm not changing the size after this upscale. This is to add detail back to the picture. This may take a little bit longer. And I'm going to need to get a VAE decode tiled. Connect that up the latent, connect the VAE, and then get a image preview over here. And for the sake of it, I'm going to lower the denoise to like 4.7. And the steps can come way down. Yeah, you best not touch my spaghetti. This is my favorite part. I don't like too much organization because the spaghetti makes me happy. So let me go ahead and run this. We'll see how long it goes for. Oh, that's a good loaf right there. All right. And so yeah, this is going to take just a second. Yeah, exactly. You have to step back and appreciate all the madness that you've created. Yep. And so now let's look at kind of a comparison. So detail in the eyes isn't really there, but you get that upscale. So why I do this is if you upscale from, let's see, 1024 to 2048, the output's going to kind of be a wild card. There's going to be a lot of issues with the anatomy or the details. Sometimes the details look better at the cost of coherence. So what I do is I make the image bigger first, and then I just tell the K sampler, just kind of fix it up a little bit. Yeah, too big of an upscale at once. But this way you can skip all those steps, because what I used to do before I learned how to do this was I would just do several image to image steps until I got it to the size. And now that would be like all the way over this way, and the image wouldn't even look this good. This way, it already has the bigger image. It's just adding back in the detail. Yes. Go ahead, Brain. While I sip some coffee. Yes, absolutely. So I did this just last night when I was doing that test with the image to image. So I'll load it up real quick and then I'll show kind of how I got there. So upscale monster is what I called it. So basically, I was just copying and pasting this setup right here. Um, I had set it up to where it was just going to be the same thing over and over again until it got to the image size that I wanted. So to do that, you hold Control and you select the spot. So say that's the spot over there, but for the sake of it, and then you right click on a blank area of the workspace and you save selected as template. Um, beans. We're gonna name it beans. So now that's saved. Get rid of that. You right click, node templates, beans. Now, it brought it all the way over here. How do you move stuff? So you can select the whole area, hold shift, and then you can drag the whole monster. And it will also snap it to the grid sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't work that well. But that's kind of how you move it around a little bit. Does that answer your quote unquote question for the rest of the class? Cool. Okay. Get rid of that because it was a failure anyway. But that is basically my text image to image, model upscale, and then image to image refiner setup there. Oh, let's see. I got a screenshot from Bardo. Dude, you are already in it. Very good. Oh, for Excel, yeah, no clue. No idea. I'm too much of a baby. So, but looking at Bard's workspace reminds me of something. Grouping. It's not a bad idea to have a group when some things get a little bit crazy. So I just right clicked and hit add group. I'm going to bring that group on over so you can drag it to resize it. And now I can keep all of my first steps in a group, move it around. So upscale, reduce noise, repeat for better images at the cost of speed. Yes. Um, and and you really have to determine on whether it's worth it or not. For example, if this was a very super close-up picture of Anthony Hopkins as a baker, I wouldn't really worry about it because the closer the image is to the face, or the closer the face is to the viewer, it's gonna get those details a lot better. But for certain pictures where you're doing like half body or full body, yeah, you kind of want to go for as much size as you can to get that quality. Unless you're going back into in painting, in say 1111, then you can just in paint the face and any other small details that you think need that extra work. Um, but yeah, like Brain's saying right now, the 1050 will limit you a little bit. Um, but I wouldn't say entirely. If you can get a good 1024 and do that little bit of extra in painting work, you can get some pretty good ones. Um, I am just a avid upscaler. It's my favorite thing to do. Do I have another? I just realized I had a whole other K sampler in here. What you doing in there? So that kind of is that. Do like brain, no upscale. Yeah. SOC is probably now damaged. So any questions before I go over kind of my next part here? We're going to go over LoRa's, embeddings, and ControlNet just briefly. Mostly LoRa's and embeddings because they're quick. Yes, I know. Any questions? Going once, going twice. Coolio. All right, so let's do a LoRa. Now you go to add node, loaders, load VAE. No, wrong one. Let's just go LoRa. We're gonna load LoRa. Now you saw a few ones in there. Load LoRa does just fine. Now you're gonna need to do some rerouting a little bit. We're gonna go to, well, first let's talk about this. So instead of putting your LoRa's in your prompt, like I don't remember the exact way it shows up in automatic 1111, but you have to write it in the prompt for it to work. Here you need to load up a whole node for it. When you load up the node, if you have LoRa's in your models folder, LoRa's here, you can pull it up that way. For me, I'm going to do, I'm just going to do add detail. Oh, I got to do aipub. Yeah, something like that. So let's do an aipub v4 because this is an aipub class. Let's go, baby. So, kind of an unfortunate thing, and I'll show you kind of how we can get around this, but let me disconnect all of these models here. Now, if you know you're going to be bringing in, if you know you're going to be bringing in LoRa's at some point, I'd say there's a cooler way to set this up to where it's going to be easier to adjust that. But first, let's go ahead and we're going to disconnect our clip from our text encode. And then we're going to bring our clip to our load LoRa instead. And then from there, we'll convert our clip back over to our text encode. So now it's running it through the LoRa first. Now the same thing will go with model. We're going to do this right here. And then we can bring our model on over there. Now, as far as the conditioning goes, because that's where it's... Oh, wait, no, rather the model. Let me show you a cool trick here. If you're going to be bringing in LoRa's in and out, I highly suggest using... So if you look up in your search reroute, it'll let you set up a model reroute or reroute for any node, really. Yes. So reroute is life. So the reason being is if I were to set up all of the model nodes to go to this reroute versus just over there, changing it from being in that LoRa back over to just the plain model is really easy because I don't need to disconnect it from everything. It's basically a power strip is how I like to look at it. Like you plug it into your wall. So now I only need to move them back and forth between the reroute and the model versus every K sampler. And this will go for if you need to reroute VAE or anything like that. It's a really useful tool. Use it a lot. Clean up your spaghetti every once in a while. Honestly, reroute for me is not a thing. I hate it. I use this other thing for efficient nodes. Hey, and you know what? Whatever works best for you. This is just kind of what works good for me. But yeah, that's basically all it takes to get your LoRa plugged in. And then from there, you can adjust the strength, your clip. I think this is this clip skip, Brain? Or is there a difference between clip strength and clip skip? Okay. Yeah, so then I usually just leave it at 1. Copy that. So let's go ahead and run it with the aipub LoRa. Insert it's the same picture GIF. Oh, okay. And maybe that's something that could be talked about at a different time. Actually, this is looking pretty crispy. Crispier than the bread he's holding. Can we add different text for LoRa and different for base checkpoint? How do you mean? Oh, you mean different prompts for the LoRa and then different pops for the base checkpoint? Okay. So I actually do this in my, I'll show it towards the end. How about that? Because we're going to go over one more thing here. And then we'll goof around for a little bit, okay? So next up, so we got the LoRa's down. Now, when you're using a like say a character LoRa that needs a trigger, you still got to put that trigger in the prompt. That's still the same. But for a style LoRa such as aipub or add detail, the node does just fine. Now, if you've used textual inversion embeddings at all in your models, that'll go under embeddings. And I have a few of them, and I like to use them a whole lot. So, how do you use them? So, you got your file names here. Let's go. I'm going to get my negative embeddings in. So, I'm going to use my bad hand v4 and my easy negative. So, those would go in my negative prompt. Let me zoom that in so y'all can see it. It's going to be embedding easy negative dot safe tensors. And then I'm also going to put embedding bad hand v4.pt. I don't need the extensions, so I can get rid of embedding. Good to know. It's worked all the same for me. Like I said, I learned how to use negative embeddings like last week. Oh, don't need oh, okay, I gotcha. So I can get rid of this. Good to know. It's all worked well enough. But now we need, let's do half body portrait holding bread. And then we're going to run it. And then we'll add a positive embedding as well. So I want to see what it does with this. I'm going to make it a little trippy in here. Look at that bread, dude. Look at that bread. And this is just my favorite part, is watching the whole process go. That's some good bread right there. Oh yeah, no, I love, I'm constantly like, just like, all right, this one, and this one, and then this one. It's good stuff. So negative embeddings are in. Let's go ahead and I'm going to add in, what's the one? Embedding style gravity magic. Let's see if we can make this trippy. There we go. So you can use your positive embeddings the same way in your positive prompts. It's really cool stuff. Okay. So that's embeddings. We have talked about LoRa's. Now, as far as ControlNet, we're basically on almost out of time here, or about out of time. You'll need to go to for preprocessors for ControlNet. I'll drop a link in for the GitHub to get those preprocessors. You can still load ControlNets without. I think it comes with ControlNet loaders out of the box, but you need to get the preprocessors separately, and that's those are I don't think decently sized. Actually, no, wait, you need to get the ControlNet models. It comes with the loaders, but you need to still download the models, and then you need to get the preprocessor nodes. So that might be a different time. As far as that, any questions with LoRa's and embeddings? Okay. Good dealio. So last couple things. We already talked about the cool upscale thing. I went ahead of myself on that one. I think next time we do a class, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of some more, I'd say, intermediate stuff. Like one of the cool things you can do is change inputs to, or change certain sliders on your nodes to inputs. So this is how I change my the size of my image or the aspect ratio on random. Is instead of having it set to a slider, I can set it to a random number or a random number of my choosing, and it will switch between those numbers. But that's for a different time because that'll take too long, I think. Um, let's see. We went through upscale by factor. Yep. So I'd say some good homework, if you will. Oh yeah, go ahead, Brain. Brainticles is typing. Oh yeah, let's do that real quick. So if you add um, this, I'm going to do this as an example. Anthony Hopkins, Steve Buscemi, Elon Musk. Like that. It's going to choose between the three. There's our boy. The American flag, like he's in space. Let's go. Even space looks like bread. And I'm just going to cancel it because I want to see if it randomly chooses the same one. Okay, so it's Elon again. Cancel. There's our Buscemi. And there's our Hopkins. Very cool. Um, so yeah, that's basically it. That's all I got for today. Um, I'm gonna drop in some links here real quick. So I'd highly recommend looking into Node Suite. It's on Civet, and I'm gonna drop in the link right here. There's that one. So this will give you a whole bunch of other really useful nodes. Next class I want to do is about my kind of the face upscaler that I've talked to you guys about, which is a cool node that's included in the Woz suite. So the instructions are clear enough. I think getting it installed, it's not too big of a deal. So get the chance, get that going and mess around with it a little bit. It comes with a lot of great features. Another one that might be worth looking into is this cutoff for ComfyUI. Basically, what it does, and it's a little, it looks a little bit complicated, but if you see over, let's see if I can. No, zooming in is not. Let me see. Open image, a new tab. So you can take the clip set regions and change it. I'm trying to find a good way to explain it, but basically you can specify different cutoff areas. So you want, if you ever run into this issue where, say, I prompt a, like it happened to me last night, not using this, I prompted blonde woman in mecha gear, and it kept on making her gear blonde as well. So colors are always kind of a pain in the butt that way. They will kind of just bleed everywhere, if you will. This kind of helps guide specific parts of the prompt to stay in their color zones. I haven't used it for much else than color. I'm sure there's other great uses for it. But in the example that this person posted, so you can see a cute girl, white shirt and a green tie, red shoes, and then they went in, put in this clip regions string and specified all of these different parts of the image to get exactly what they were looking for pretty much consistently. And I've tried it, and it's not 100% consistent. This person probably also was very selective. Um, it is very cool, though. It's fun to mess around with. And then, so let me copy that in there as well. And then last thing is if you're interested in ControlNet, you're going to need to get these processors. There's preprocessors if you're trying to make your masks. If you're starting off with, if you're doing, say, ControlNet Canny or anything like that, that doesn't necessarily need a preprocessor, I don't think. Then, actually, I think it needs a preprocessor. Or you have masks already available to you. Windows do the same thing. Oh, for the cutoff. That's a good question. I'll tell you what, I haven't messed around with the weights on these like at all. Um, anyway, as far as the as far as the ControlNet models, those will be the same ones you've been using. If you've been using them at all, uh, they are all like 4 GB a piece. So, you know, if you have the space, go ahead and get them. Yeah. Any questions for me while I still got y'all? Alrighty. Good dealio. Well, thank you guys for coming along. This was really fun. I plan on doing another one, like I said, on some of the cool WASnode suite features. Yeah, no problem. And I'm sure Brain's going to have another one as well. Um, Brain's going to have a class this week. Highly recommend showing up to it. I think he's still waiting on the poll to close out for uh, what class we're going to do on the Mastodon. So make sure you go ahead, head on over to aipub.social, find Brain, and vote on that poll. Yep, I voted too, but I ended up doing it anyway. So thank you guys for coming. I hope you guys have a great day.